Aroid channel wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so delighted you've joined me for a lovely story tonight. And this story starts in Venice, of all the picturesque cities, would you believe? So before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's continue with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, Carrie de Royson could not believe she was in Venice, which in her humble opinion was the most unique, picturesque floating city in the entire world. This major Italian port that is situated on the northern Adriatic Sea, with its quintessential distinctive Venetian architecture, is made up of bridges and canals, with prominent famous landmarks such as Rolto Bridge, St. Mark's Basilica, and Doge's Palace, which are all consequently styled in what is known as La Serenissima, which quite literally means the serene and sublime, which, as you can imagine, is a befitting way to describe the all-encompassing romantic charm that Venice so elegantly beholds, that casts its expression on the map with an indelible uniqueness that makes it one of the jewels in the crown when it comes to places that need to be visited before you die. It certainly seemed like a dream come true to be here, so much so that Carrie almost had to pinch herself. Was she really here in Venice? Was this even real, she wondered. She couldn't remember a time when she had felt this happy or content. She wore such a pleased smile on her face that refused to abate, as she was so ecstatically thrilled to be here, and it was difficult not to smile the whole time, as it was not every day you were swept off your feet by a tall, dark, handsome Italian Adonis such as Leonardo, who in a matter of 6 months now wore the proud title of being her fiancé, like a badge on his lapel, that it would seem he wanted everybody to see. "I want everybody to know that you'll soon be my wife," he had boasted proudly. Carrie had always longed to come to Italy. It had been a lifelong dream of hers. But certainly to be standing here on this Juliet balcony of the stunning Gothic-style boutique hotel had to be the most exhilarating feeling in the world. It was such a magical night. The ebony black sky was clustered with silvery stars and a full moon that overlooked the twinkling lights of the harbour. Carrie stood next to her fiancé Leonardo, and hand in hand they stared out at the idyllic view that stretched out before them like a glossy postcard. Being here with her husband-to-be was possibly the most blissfully romantic thing that had ever happened to Carrie, and her friends, if they could see her now, they would be green with envy, especially her best friend Charlotte, who had told her in no uncertain terms how incredibly lucky she was to snag a man as desirable as Leonardo. "It's like you got a packet of cereal from Walmart," she teased, "but your packet of cereal contained gold bullion, while ours only contained plastic trinkets that we thought were pretty cool until we compared what we had with yours. I can't believe you met such a catch like Leonardo online of all things. This is seriously crazy. How does a guy like Leonardo end up on a dating website? He should have been snapped up a long time ago. You're incredibly lucky, Carrie. He's the whole package and more." Carrie shivered with delight as she reflected over Charlotte's words. She knew that Charlotte was right. She had picked out the cereal that contained the gold bullion in it for sure, and to think she nearly cancelled her date with Leonardo that night when she had experienced a sudden attack of cold feet. It was Charlotte who had actively encouraged Carrie to take the bull by the horns and daringly go on this date with Leonardo, so she couldn't overlook the fact that if it wasn't for her best friend, she might never have met him. There was a slight chill in the air as a soft spring breeze blew against her flawless, perfect porcelain complexion, while her long silken auburn hair was whisked up wildly in the breeze like a fabulous curtain of gold. "It's so beautiful, Leonardo," she said approvingly, her blue eyes gazing up into his adoringly. "Thank you so much for bringing me here to Venice. This is a dream come true for me. I've always wanted to come here, and now here we are." Leonardo, in his low, husky voice, whispered, "It sure is beautiful.
but not as beautiful as you, Cassie," he said affectionately, kissing her forehead and drawing her into a warm hug. "I knew I had to bring you here before we got married. It was certainly the right thing to do. I wanted you to see the place of my birth and to appreciate my Italian heritage, as one day when we have children of our own, they will be half Italian. So their mother needs to be familiar and au fait with their father's culture, does she not? Not to worry. When you spend some time in Italy, you will learn from my own grandmother, and before you know it, you'll be cooking pasta like a pro, and you'll feel as if you've always belonged here."
"Oh, I can't wait to learn to cook Italian," said Cassie dreamily. "I hope your grandmother will teach me everything I need to know. I'm a keen learner. I can't believe you grew up here," she said wondrously. "Why did you ever leave this place to come to America? I'd have wanted to stay here forever and ever."
Leonardo smiled. "Everyone loves Venice," he said. "I will admit it's very good to be back home again, even though I was here last year. Wait until I take you to see some of my extended members of the family in Tuscany. You're going to love all of them, most especially my grandmother. More to the point, my family are going to really love you."
"Oh, I look forward to meeting them all, Leonardo. I can't wait, actually. But there'll definitely be a language gulf between us all. As you say, their English isn't that good." "You're so lucky," she said enviously. "You can speak fluent Italian, and that must really help. I wish I could speak Italian, because I'm sure there are going to be times that I feel distinctly like a fish out of water."
"I'm sure you can learn to pick up Italian pretty quickly. You never know. We might even come to live here for a short while, so you'll quickly pick up the language that way."
"I like the sound of that," said Carrie. "But I wish you wouldn't keep calling me Cassie. My name is Carrie."
"I'm very sorry. Why do I keep forgetting that?"
"I don't know. Maybe you prefer the name Cassie."
"No, I don't. I like the name Carrie. It's just a slip of the tongue. That's what it is."
Carrie liked the idea of living in Italy for a short while. It certainly would be a romantic adventure. And then she could easily end up learning the language. It didn't get better than that, did it? Carrie cradled herself in a warm hug as she stared out at the view wondrously and pondered about the beautiful surprises the future might hold in store for her. She couldn't wait to become Leonardo's wife. She imagined what it might be like to be called Carrie Angelinus. Carrie may not have known Leonardo for very long, but from the moment she had met him, she had known he was the one for her. It had been an instinctive feeling. Who would have thought that she'd have met the love of her life on a dating website of all things? The idea had seemed preposterous to her, but it really had happened like something already mapped out from a romantic novel. Maybe some things were just meant to be. When Carrie met up with Leonardo on their first date 6 months earlier, she had been somewhat taken aback that the photograph she had seen online failed to do him any justice. It was an established fact that usually when you met people from a dating website, when you met them in real life, they tended to look vastly different to their online photograph, and usually not in a good way either. Let's just say with flattering light effects, you could get away with a multitude of sins. Yet in Leonardo's case, he was even more gorgeous in real life than in his photograph, and even Charlotte agreed with her on this after her first introduction to Leonardo. Since Carrie's first meeting with Leonardo Angelinus, it would seem the loved-up couple had pretty much been inseparable. And certainly on the second date, Leonardo had confidently told Carrie that he loved her. She had been bewildered by his confident proclamations of love, and not exactly known how to react to this, especially a man telling her he loved her so soon into the relationship. "I don't know how you can say you love me when you barely know me," she had said rather demurely, her face flushing bright pink from the boldness of Leonardo's declarations. "You don't know me at all," she continued. Leonardo had thrown his head back and cracked up laughing.
"You're such a cynic, aren't you, Carrie? Why do you find it hard to believe I love you? Why is that such an implausible impossibility to you? You see, my being Italian means I say it as it is, and I don't ever hold back when it comes to expressing my love. Italian is the language of love.
I just can't believe it's possible that you can say you love me on our second date. That's all, she had said with a little stammer. You might like the look of me and enjoy my company to a degree, but you can't know you love someone unless you've been with them for an awfully long period of time. Only then can you know if you love them.
You have very fixed opinions on things, don't you, Carrie? You certainly know how to complicate the language of love, which is pretty simple as far as I'm concerned, Leonardo had said smoothly, his voice as rich as butter. It's simple, Carrie. I love you, and for your information I intend to be with you for a long time, he had said resolutely. I mean to make it my business to know everything there is to know about you, because you, Carrie de Royston, well, I've never met anyone quite like you before. You're an extraordinary woman, which is why the moment when I laid eyes on you, I knew you were the girl for me. And let's just say when I saw that golden hair of yours and realized it was the real deal and none of this fake dyed stuff, well, you had me hooked.
When Leonardo had asked Carrie to be his wife, it had been on their 12th date to be precise, and on bended knee, of course. He had presented her with the most beautiful diamond ring that she had ever beheld, that had once belonged to Leonardo's father's mother, who was since deceased. She had said yes almost immediately, as that was how sure she was about Leonardo, who had come into her life so serendipitously, rather like a rainbow in the sky, after the rains had fallen, and subsequently stolen her heart. If the truth be told, she'd have done pirouettes in the sky if that were at all possible. She was so deliriously happy to have someone as charming and debonair as Leonardo. It was just too bad that her parents had never warmed up to her fiancé from when she had introduced him to them over a pre-arranged dinner, where her mother had gone to so much trouble to make a celebratory meal for the couple. Her parents had been ever so eager to meet the man who would make an honest woman out of their daughter, but from the moment Leonardo had walked through the front door to greet her parents, they had both physically looked rather crestfallen. It had been visibly apparent to Carrie that her father did not like Leonardo at all, and she couldn't comprehend why her adoring father, who she loved more than life itself, had taken an instant dislike to her fiancé. What on earth did he see in Leonardo that she failed to see? Later that evening she had discreetly taken her father to one side to demand answers from him as to why it was so blindingly obvious that he didn't like her fiancé one single bit. And her father had not corrected her on her assumptions. Instead, he had affirmed her very worst fears when he said very simply, "There is something about him I just don't like." Carrie had been livid, so much so that she had abruptly told her fiancé that they needed to leave at once. "I don't think my father likes you, Leonardo," she had told him, as they had left her parents' home that evening. "My father practically admitted as much to me, which is why I dragged you away from the dinner party. My parents have got such a cheek. How dare they judge you when they barely know you at all? It's so presumptuous of them." Leonardo had told Carrie to calm down, and very matter-of-factly said, "But of course your father doesn't like me. It's hardly a surprise, is it? I'm about to steal away his beloved daughter. He's jealous, that's what this is. You know fathers, they're very possessive about their daughters, and doubtlessly he thinks no one would ever be good enough for his little princess. That's how my father undoubtedly feels about my own sister Gabriella. I imagine when she finally ties the knot, he's also going to experience similar reservations. But that's fathers for you. They're the same the world over. I imagine when we have a daughter one day, I'll experience very similar feelings." Carrie sighed. Her father was not a jealous person by nature. She knew he wanted the very best for her, but he had made it astoundingly clear to Carrie that Leonardo was a slippery character that couldn't be trusted, and she should not marry him under any circumstances. Maybe her father had a thing about her marrying someone not from their own culture, but the idea seemed ludicrously silly, as her father had never been known to discriminate against anyone before, and his best friend was Latino. Carrie shut her eyes tightly, squeezing those unsettling thoughts away. Right now, surrounded by the bright lights of the harbour, reflected so beautifully in the water of the canal, one thing was for certain: She didn't want to indulge any thoughts of her father on this night. Why could he not be happy for her? No doubt he had influenced her mother, Liz, into being deeply cynical about her relationship with Leonardo. She had falsely assumed her parents would love Leonardo as much as she did. How wrong she had been about that. She certainly didn't want to spoil this magical evening by thinking about her father's obvious aversion to Leonardo. Sooner or later, she decided, her parents, whether they liked it or not, would have to accept who it was that she had chosen to marry, because when she married Leonardo, she wanted her father to walk her down the aisle and give her away. She released her grip from Leonardo's firm hand. She did a little dance-like twist, accompanied by a few jiggles on the Juliet balcony, which was her happy dance. She always did this when she was excited, because every time things in life were going her way, Carrie loved to gyrate her hips, especially in time to music, and do a few twists and turns in a celebratory surrender to the euphoria she felt, almost as an outward expression of the joy she genuinely experienced in being here in such a romantic city such as this, that people had written about in novels and artists had come here to paint. She certainly could not remember a time when she felt more happy. Leonardo chuckled in amusement as he watched his fiancée doing her dance moves on the balcony. He was looking out over the water of the harbour and the lights from the Gothic buildings, and he could see that his fiancée was almost certainly ecstatic to be here.
"That's why I wanted to bring you here, Carrie," he told her. "I had a hunch you would feel about Venice as I do. This is the place where I was born, and there is nowhere in the world quite like it."
"I'm not going to argue with you on that," Carrie admitted. "I confess I thought Venice would be beautiful, but in truth I never expected everything to be this dreamy. Since we've arrived here, everything has been nothing short of spectacular." All of a sudden, tears began to spill down Carrie's cheeks. Leonardo looked momentarily concerned, as he'd never seen his fiancée crying before, so this was a first for him. As in the short time he'd known Carrie, well, he'd never seen her get upset about anything. He wiped Carrie's tears away from her eyes with his thumbs, and said,
"Why are you crying? I thought you said you were happy to be here."
Carrie poked him in the chest and laughed. "Don't you get it, Leonardo? I'm crying because I'm so happy. These are happy tears." The hotel suite was absolutely luxurious, in every single sense of the word, with crisp white Egyptian cotton sheets overlaying the bed, under a glorious cover with pictures of Venice on the fabric. The old-world Italianite furnishings in polished walnut, and the sumptuously decadent decor, had quite literally taken Carrie's breath away. And to think that Leonardo's parents had insisted on paying for their week's trip to Italy, as Leonardo's mother had said that before they started planning their wedding, the couple needed a special break, and she felt it was significantly important that Carrie went to Italy to learn about Leonardo's Italian roots, especially as Carrie would be marrying into the family, so she had gifted them both with this trip, although by the looks of things, Leonardo himself was not short of a bob or two, given the posh car he was driving and the designer clothes he sported. But Carrie had never asked her fiancé about finances, because that just did not seem like the right thing to be doing. Earlier on in the day, the couple had taken a ride in a gondola and admired all the colourful buildings they had passed in the water, that stood up proud and tall, presenting themselves in that typical Venetian Gothic style of architecture that embodied this remarkable city. There were medieval churches and so much more in this intriguing place that wore its history very dramatically on its buildings, with a patriotic pride and pomp and ceremony that could not be denied. Sublime really was the only way to describe it all. The couple had seen the house on the Grand Canal that had belonged to Johnny Depp, and Elton John's house on Giudecca Island. It had been marvellous, and then they had explored all the quaint, charming nooks and crannies that are so typically Venetian, along with taking walks down some of the cobbled streets, which really was like taking a trip back in time. Early on in the evening, Leonardo had taken Carrie to a treasure of a restaurant, situated in a rather unassuming but quaint little alleyway in a charming little side street, where bright red geraniums tumbled out of terracotta pots on people's balconies. There were locals riding bicycles with hand baskets, down the street, many of them dressed in elegant Italian ensemble. Leonardo was able to find the charming little restaurant with very little difficulty. It was tucked away rather discreetly behind a green awning. There were tables and chairs assembled in and outside the restaurant, which had a cheery buzz and vibrant atmosphere that spoke of casual weekends and carefree days where trouble did not exist and life was extremely good. Leonardo's family visited this restaurant very regularly, at least twice a year, when they returned to Italy. Leonardo's parents had been good friends with the owners that lived in the apartment above their business. Serafina De Marco was an authentic Italian restaurant that produced outstanding simplistic dishes that were both flavourable and hearty, so it was regularly frequented by the locals in the area, and the prices were affordable. It would seem Leonardo's mother Estelle had been to school with Serafina, who owned the restaurant with her husband Marco, and the business had thrived over the years and prospered greatly. The restaurant was appropriately named after the two owners, hence the name Serafina De Marco. When Serafina observed Leonardo standing in the doorway of her restaurant, she recognized him at once and dashed over to him to welcome him with arms outstretched, embracing him with a warm hug, and stepping back for a second to take a long, hard look at him. "Why, I do believe you get better and better looking every year, Leonardo Angelinis," she said, squeezing his cheek affectionately. She turned around to look at Carrie, with curious brown bird-like eyes that were both friendly and warm. "Is this who I think it is?" she said. "You are the lovely lady that met Leonardo on a dating site. Estelle told me all about it."
"I see my mother hasn't been scant with the details," chuckled Leonardo. "That's right, we met on a dating site. Serafina, may I introduce you to my fiancée, Carrie? Carrie, this is Serafina."
The two women greeted each other warmly. Serafina was a good-looking woman in her early 40s, who, like many Italian women, was always immaculately turned out, wearing a chic, very elegant pair of navy blue chinos with bell bottoms, complemented by a well-fitting, flattering pink top, and a big, chunky gold chain around her neck. She had not hesitated to throw her arms around Carrie, as if she'd known the young woman all her life. She spoke in Italian to Leonardo, and said something that obviously had made him laugh. "I was telling Leonardo how surprised I am the way you young people meet today on these dating websites. In my generation, things like this did not exist, you know. It is so good to meet you, Carrie. Leonardo's mother Estelle told me all about you. Oh, good, I hope. Oh, but of course. She said I could expect a visit from you and Leonardo. And now here you are. What a lovely surprise and a lovely treat for the both of us to finally meet you."
"But of course we would come to see you and Marcus, Serafina. Every time we come to Venice, we always come to see you. And I wanted Carrie to meet you and Marco, and of course to taste your delicious food."
"Oh, you are quite the charmer, Leonardo," chuckled Serafina. "You're just like your father, you are. Now let me show you to a table, shall I? How about you sit outside? It's such a beautiful night tonight. You can watch the world go by under the stars. It's so pretty out there."
"Sounds lovely, Serafina,"
said Leonardo, putting his arms tenderly around Carrie. "Do you know, Carrie," said Serafina, fixing her eyes steadily on Carrie, "I've known Leonardo here since he was a little thing. He'd come here every Friday night to enjoy a hearty meal at our restaurant with his family. Isn't that right, Leonardo? He was such an adorable little thing back in the day. The cutest dimples you have ever seen. I told Leonardo's mother Estelle on many occasions that Leonardo would break many a woman's heart because he's so handsome. You remember all your visits here as a boy, Leonardo?" she asked him, turning to look at him directly. Leonardo smiled.
"That's right. Me and my family were at this restaurant every Friday night. When we came back to Venice, we always ate here as well, without fail. My dad always says no one can cook quite like you, Seraphina. So I can't wait to introduce Carrie to real, authentic Venetian food."
Seraphina's dark eyes lit up with the compliment. She certainly liked it when people appreciated her good cooking. "Your parents were here 2 months ago, Leonardo," she told him. "It was lovely to see them again. Your mother Estelle was telling me that your feud with Gabriella is still going on. That is very sad to hear, very sad. How long has it been? 7 years, I believe. That's a long, long time, is it not?"
Leonardo's jaw tightened. It seemed as if his face stiffened at the very mention of his sister Gabriella, whom he had not spoken about in years, well spoken to, that is, even though she was always present and in attendance at family gatherings. But they didn't so much as say a word to each other, and pretty much ignored each other, as if the other party did not even exist. Even Leonardo's own parents were loath to know what was going on between the two siblings, whose relationship was fractured, for they had no way of knowing what had led to this dispute that had severed the relationship irredeemably. The siblings were not forthcoming in regards to this matter that was embroiled in much secrecy and idle speculation. As Leonardo's soon-to-be wife, Carrie had tried to get to the bottom of this mystery, as to why there was so much discord between the two of them. But when it came to talking about his sister, Leonardo was pretty much a closed book, where the pages were bound together with superglue. "I don't want to talk about Gabriella," he would say. "Don't you ever mention her name to me again. We just don't get on. It's as simple as that." It was rather worrying for Carrie that Leonardo had rubbed up a few people in the wrong way in his life, and had made for himself a few enemies along the way. But Leonardo had made no secret of this fact, as if it was nothing to be remotely ashamed of. He would claim that most of these so-called frenemies, if that's what you'd like to call them, who had been former friends of his, were just insanely jealous of his successes in life. Carrie knew a recent business partner of Leonardo's had accused him of siphoning some of the company funds. But Leonardo had told Carrie that the accusations that were levelled against him had been completely false, and in fact it was the other way round. It had been his business partner that had been siphoning funds from the company. Carrie emphatically believed everything her fiancé told her as being the gospel truth. She believed Leonardo was a man of integrity and trusted him implicitly. On this evening, Carrie listened very curiously to how her fiancé Leonardo would answer Seraphina's rather probing question about his sister Gabriella. It still secretly niggled her that Leonardo was at loggerheads with his sister, for she didn't understand why this was the case. She did remember at a recent dinner at the Angelina's house that she had attended, when both siblings had been present at the dinner table. They had ignored each other, and it had felt extremely awkward. After dinner, Gabriella had walked past Carrie and whispered in her ear, "You should stay away from Leonardo if you know what's good for you. He's not who you think he is." There was no doubt that Gabriella did not have anything good to say about her brother, and whatever she had to say, Carrie didn't want to hear what it was, because she wholeheartedly believed that Gabriella was most likely at fault, and the likely instigator of the siblings' problems. Leonardo was of course the innocent party that had been badly wronged. She was sure of that. Carrie was certain that Gabriella was a self-entitled little madam who needed to be knocked off her pedestal. She had seen the type before often enough. Leonardo sighed at Seraphina's question. "I can't believe my mother's been discussing all this with you. Why would she do that? It's very invasive of her."
"Don't blame your mother, Leonardo, for this. She wanted to confide in me. She knows me and Marco have children of our own. She was asking us if we had any issues like this with our own children. Luckily, we don't. Your parents are worried about the fallout between you and your sister Gabriella. They say that you don't even acknowledge each other anymore, that you have not spoken to each other in many years. Take it from me, Leonardo, it's not worth falling out with a sibling. Gabriella, well, she's an invaluable member of your family, is she not? Blood is always so much thicker than water at the end of the day. Can the two of you not make up, perhaps?"
"It's complicated, Seraphina," Leonardo had said somewhat mutely. "Do you mind if we don't talk about it now? I'm here to show my fiancé the delights of Venice, and that's what I intend to do. The last thing I want to do is to discuss Gabriella."
"But of course, Leonardo. Me and Marco, we are so delighted that you are here. You are like family to us. You know that, so consider the subject about Gabriella closed. You are here to enjoy yourself, are you not? To taste some of my hearty dishes that I have. Wait until you taste my lamb on the bone. It melts in the mouth like butter," she said, smacking her lips together in a dramatic gesture of appreciation. So there we are. That is the end of part 1 of our story. Part 2 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.